Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today's guest is a partner and licensed paralegal at Sempiero Tumarkin LLP. And thank you so much, Melanie, here for joining us. We're really happy to have you and look forward to hearing from you and your journey there to partnership at the firm.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. I checked out some of your videos, and you're doing a lot of really cool stuff. So thank you for doing this. Yeah, so as you're saying, I've been a partner now at the firm for just a few months, but prior to that, I was working at the firm just as a regular litigation paralegal for probably I think about 6 years or so. Before that, I was an assistant to paralegal through the firm. And before that, I was looking for work. So I've been with the firm in total for about 10 years. And throughout that time, I've been mostly doing employment, but I've also done personal injury, accident benefits, and some insurance, disability law. I've dabbled in landlord and tenant, but it's certainly not my expertise, and some defense side work as well. But mainly employment is right now my bread and butter for the most part. So yeah, that's pretty much, it's a, even though it's been 10 years, it's a very short kind of intro. I think I've been doing this for quite some time. I'm very happy and lucky to now be made partner. I think that it's such a good thing for paralegals that are in school or, that want to do litigation to, strive to understand that you can do that as well. And I think that the profession needs more paralegals to have a seat at the table, to give their perspectives on certain matters that lawyers don't really deal with or in their expertise. And I'm very lucky that the firm was willing to consider me for that role with them. And it's been really fun so far, and it's been a great experience. The community has been super receptive about it, which is great to see. So hoping that this will not be something that is unusual. I hope it's the new norm moving forward.
All right, so perfect. So let's maybe back up 10 plus years ago then and
Sure.
kind of start. So were you, I guess, looking into getting into law from the outset? Was that something, back then that you wanted to do? And then when did you kind of go and get your paralegal license? Was that kind of before or after you started kind of working in law?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to do something in law. I didn't know what it was exactly. And at the time, paralegals had just started to be regulated. So back in 2007. And I thought, well, I don't really want to go to law school. It seems like it's a long time to get undergrad. I don't want to do all of that. I want to do something else. And looking at what the description, I guess, of what a paralegal was, I figured this is actually much more in line with what I want to do. You're almost, that access to justice, I think, was such a problem and remains a problem now, but just being available to help people that maybe find lawyers intimidating, or they know that their matter isn't, or a lawyer wouldn't take it on, and still being able to assist them, that really drew me to it. And so I really like that angle of it. And so I went to Sheridan College, actually, did my 2 years there, graduated 2011, got my license later that year, and then was looking for work and started as a legal assistant to actually another paralegal. And she pretty much took me under her wing, and kind of taught me everything that she knew. And she had been licensed for about 10 years, or not licensed, but she'd been doing this for about 10 years at the time. And so that was a really good opportunity to learn under someone who had been doing it for so long. She stepped away and said, "Hey, do you want to, take over my practice?" And I think at the time I was maybe 21 or 22, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I thought, well, I feel like this is the best chance I'm ever going to get to really get to do my own thing. And she was mainly doing accident benefits. So it was people who were involved in Motor Vehicle Act claims. And so I took it over, and it all kind of went from there. So again, what really drew me to it is just I think that paralegals just in general, I think they're so underutilized, and I think that they serve such an important role in justice and having people have access to justice. And I just really like that angle of it. And I think there's lots of lawyers out there, and I want to do something a little bit different. So that's really what kind of drew me to it.
And so you start off, you have now you're very young, you have this AB practice, and kind of how does that lead you to joining the firm and all that has followed?
Yeah. So what happened was I was handling these accident benefits files for about a year and a bit. And I was working out of an office in Cambridge by myself. I didn't have anyone working there with me. So the firm, Sanford Market, they have their head office here in Toronto. And I basically said, hey, can I just come work there with you guys and just kind of get a bit more mentorship? And they were totally open to it. And so I moved here, and at the time, one of the named partners, his assistant, was going on a maternity leave, and he's like, "Well, do you want to do both of these things? You want to be a paralegal and an assistant?" And even though it seemed like a lot of work, I figured I've already sort of done it, and this is a chance to be an assistant to a named partner. I mean, what a better opportunity could I have here? So I did it, and he brought me to discoveries, mediations, had me sit on phone calls with opposing counsel. He was such a great mentor. And then when she came back from maternity leave, I started to take on employment law files as well. And I just really fell in love with it. It's so different from accident benefits, where accident benefits is a very slow burn of kind of a file where it can take years to resolve, where employment is just really fast paced. The law is changing constantly. And I really, really enjoyed that. And I loved kind of using both kind of two different parts of my brain in those two different areas. And so I've been doing both of those now pretty much since about 2014, 2015. I've done tons of trials, countless settlement conferences, motions, mediations from the Human Rights Tribunal. And so it's been, I've done more in the 10 years that so far than I thought I would ever do a lifetime. So it's been such a great experience so far.
So I guess maybe we can talk a little bit here about obviously making that then jump from all of that into partnership. Now, how did that kind of come about? Were you uh, thinking, like, was it something that you sat down and said, look, I'd like to kind of be elevated into this role? How did that kind of come around?
Yeah, so I had a meeting with the name partners and basically said, I have a lot of ideas about, how the firm or where the firm could go, or just, I really just want to be more of a part of the direction of where the firm is going. I've been with them as long as I had, and they were very open to that. And I figured, maybe some sort of management role, just kind of having a voice, but not, being a partner, because I didn't know that was really a thing. I didn't even know it was allowed, to be honest. And so I kind of approached them that just in a management role, just being able to kind of voice my opinion of what I think in terms of directions the firm could go into. And they actually surprised me and said that, having considered everything, we actually want to welcome you to the partnership. That's the kind of seat at the table we want to give to you. So I wasn't expecting it at all. It came as a pretty much a complete shock, but it was, ultimately it is actually kind of exactly what I wanted. Just I didn't think it would be in this way. So they actually were the ones that presented me with that. I thought of it being a little bit differently, just again, just sort of like a management role of some sort. So that's pretty well how it came about. And I think I approached them about it maybe in January, and then they came to me in June with this idea. And so, it's, again, I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think that paralegals could be partners. So it was just such a great kind of icebreaker, I thought, in terms of, I know we talked about earlier that there are other paralegals that are partners, but, they are still very few and far between. And I really relish the opportunity to make this no longer a thing where it's rare or it doesn't happen very often. I want it to be normal.
So what do we need to do to kind of change? I mean, sort of even like the larger conversation, I think, paralegals are extremely underutilized in a lot of law firms. And, as I said, it's, sometimes you watch Suits or any of these shows where they reference a paralegal into more of like a law clerk or legal assistant role. And it's perhaps because Ontario is the only place that has regulated licensed paralegals in, I think, anywhere really in the world. Some places are kind of looking at that as the next steps, but what can we do? I mean, why is that sort of rare? I mean, like I said, I think I've maybe talked to one other paralegal who was a partner at a firm beyond just paralegals or beyond their own firm.
Right.
There might be a few others that I don't know of, but again, either way, it's there's even in your own firm, there's more partners that are lawyers there than paralegal partners anywhere, right? So why is that? Why can't that change?
Yeah, I think there's kind of paralegals have been put into this box that, all they do is traffic court, or they do drafting, or they do client intake. And, when I look on LinkedIn or on Indeed, the jobs that I see that are paralegals are those things. They're client intake, they're scanning documents, they're doing pleadings. And I think that kind of with that misunderstanding of what paralegals are has kind of snowballed into, well, I guess this is what it is. And people just assume that, or law firms just assume, well, this is actually the role then, because that's kind of what's out there. And I think it's about education. I think it's about just informing the public, and that we don't just do that. I mean, yes, could you do those things? Yeah, certainly. We have paralegals at our firm that do drafting, that do client intake right now. But I think that, just kind of putting that conversation to the forefront of, no, they do litigation, they handle their own files, they have their own autonomy in that way. I think that's going to be really important. And, the profession has only been licensed in 2007, which I know seems like a long time, but it's still, a lot of progress has happened in that time. And I think there are still lawyers that have a hard time, comprehending that and accepting it. I get I've heard a lot of flack. Well, it's small claims court jurisdiction rising. I think lawyers are kind of like, well, that's our work. Now you're 35,000. That's, not an insignificant amount of money. And I think that's, just letting these law firms know that you can use paralegals in such a great way when it comes to cost perspective for their own clients, especially on the defense side. I've talked to paralegals that work at law firms that are on the defense side typically, that their clients are saying, can you just give this to someone who's a bit cheaper and is doing the same thing? And that's, I think, where paralegals come in. And so, I think that it's something where, with myself, and I think these other paralegals that are partners, once it becomes more normal, I think it kind of opens that conversation of the firms looking inward and saying, well, this person's a paralegal, they contribute a lot. Maybe they should have a seat at the table too, since this obviously isn't all that uncommon. So I think it really is going to turn to the law firms to, break those barriers as well. And the paralegals within those firms to kind of not demand, but come to their, partners or the, managing individuals at their firms they work at to approach them about it, because I think that they probably don't know they're allowed to, or that that's even an option. So I think that's going to be hopefully a way that this will be more of a common situation in the future.
And do we have to maybe then take it kind of like, let's say, from the very beginning, when a firm, a larger firm welcomes in paralegals, initially, what are they, again, what are they being tasked to do? Like you said, if they're just doing client intake and drafting, I mean, that kind of limits that progression, right? Because they're not being entrusted with, think about all the tribunals that you have full scope to do, right? I mean, that's something that, rather than hand it off to like an articling student or a junior associate, that's something any paralegal there at the firm is capable of doing. So how do you, maybe, from your experience, because you've done a tremendous amount of, even, the name partners there, I think in that article, we're talking about all that you accomplished in your 10 years there, but how do you kind of push yourself forward to say, look, I can do this. This is in my scope? Because again, there's a lot of that lack of understanding, I think, from a lot of lawyers about, well, they're not just a legal assistant. They can go to court. They can address the matter. They can speak to the matter. They can argue the matter. They can argue the motion, right? Whatever it is. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of change that dialogue? And so, one, it's obviously giving them the understanding, the knowledge that you can do it, but how do you get them to kind of entrust you with a lot of that material, given that, 14 years ago, there was no licensed paralegal to begin with?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's certainly not something that will happen overnight. I do think that, just in the time I've been doing, I've been practicing, or, been working for the firm, I have seen an increase in paralegals handling defense side work, or other paralegals doing plaintiff side work. I think it's just, I think it's been slow progress, but I think that law firms are understanding that they can utilize paralegals in this way. And I think it's just going to be up to us as paralegals, to be honest, to stand on our soapboxes and say, listen, we can do this work. Just give me the opportunity and I can show it to you. And hopefully that will kind of trickle down and other firms will see that. When I started, practicing, I got a lot of flack from lawyers of, you really shouldn't, do you really know what you're doing? Let me handle this, maybe at your scope. And I just kind of, I was a bit bullish and said, no, let me handle it. I know what I'm doing. Let me take care of this, and kind of show them that I was fully capable of doing it. So I think it's about kind of seizing an opportunity if it presents itself. If you're a paralegal at a law firm that maybe you think you're being underutilized, make that opportunity for yourself. Say, listen, partner or lawyer, I see you have this file. I think I can help you here. Here's some ideas I have. It's not always going to be easy. I think maybe I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but I think it's about having paralegals kind of insert themselves in the conversation a bit more, and not being afraid to do that. Hopefully, like I said, law firms are starting to take note that they are seeing paralegals on the other side of a file and say, well, why don't I just give this to my paralegal then to handle? And, clearly they kind of know what they're doing. So I think it's a slow progress thing, but like I said, I do see some progress being made, but I'd like to see the profession a little bit further and taken a bit more seriously. I don't have the answer exactly in terms of how do we do it. How, what's the answer to that question? I think it's just little bits by bits, and kind of chipping away and just kind of breaking down. Law firms for the most part have such traditional, they're just kind of in the same box in terms of how everything is operating. I think it's going to be these newer firms that are coming up, these younger firms, that they worked alongside paralegals and they understand their role a bit better than perhaps someone who's been practicing for 50 years. And so that was never really in their universe, and utilizing them. And I see that a lot with these smaller firms that have kind of newer calls, using a paralegal in that way, kind of almost like a tag team. So I think that will become more and more common. I think it's just kind of a matter of time, to be honest, but I do see going to that direction. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, though.
Now, what about for yourself in terms of networking, mentorship? Certainly 10 years ago, I think a lot different than it is today, but what did you find? I mean, you mentioned certainly someone kind of took you under the ring, gave you their practice. What about, younger or newer, called not necessarily younger, and especially some of my students who are going to be going on to their internships and beyond, how do they kind of acquire that opportunity to, part of it also is knowing, well, hey, look, I became a partner. Here's how I did it. Yeah. What else, what can people do in terms of mentorship and networking? What opportunities are there within sort of the paralegal network? I know there's different organizations. I don't know if you're a part of any, or what have you found in terms of that landscape that's the paralegals supporting paralegals?
Yeah, I've started in the last 2 years trying to help, give back in terms of doing a paralegal placement program for the firm, trying to really give a lot of one-on-one mentorship that way. I think if there are other paralegals at firms or law firms in general that have lawyers that can take on the 120 hours that the paralegals require, and give them that opportunity to really show what good work they can do and then find future employment that way, I think that's kind of a good way to take over that opportunity. I do think that a lot of paralegals come out of school, like myself, thinking, well, I want to, right away have my own practice. I want to litigate right away. I really want to get in front of the tribunal. And I think that sometimes what's missed is the opportunity to do perhaps, intake and assisting, not saying that that's the rest of your life, but just to kind of get your feet under you in terms of how a firm operates, what are the policies and procedures, being copied on emails between, whoever you're assisting and the person in their file to see how that communication works. Doing client intake, I think, is a huge skill, where, you get such a great opportunity to speak to clients one-on-one and learn how to build a rapport with them. What works, there's so many different types of people that I speak to and that the firm speaks to, that everyone needs something different and they need to be spoken to differently. Their needs are different, and you can kind of learn all those skills and tools and use it in the future and apply in the future. And so when you're at a point where you're perhaps going to suggest to the firm, or maybe even start your own, that you want to be litigating, you already have some of those skills in place. And, the paralegal program, it is, not all that long. It's, 2-3 years, maybe even a year, depending on where you are. And so there's a lot of these kind of real world skills that you can learn in doing these more entry level things for a little while, before getting into that. Any student that I've ever had, I never tell them to jump right into wanting to litigate. I think you're doing yourself a disservice. Get a little bit of those skills in just terms of, how an office runs, how the process works, just get familiar with that, because all those things you want to come, natural to you. And you want your focus to be on providing advice to your client, not, oh, I don't remember how many days it is until a defense is due, things like that, where I think that comes with experience and doing more entry-level roles. But, I got really lucky, I think, in terms of the sequence of events that happened. It was a lot of happenstance, to be honest, but it was also just seizing an opportunity, right? Not saying no to something that I was terrified to do. I was so scared to take over a practice of 80 files when I was 22 and had no idea what I was doing. But, my motto has always been fake it till you make it. And so I was like, let's jump into this. I don't know when I'm going to get another chance to do it again. So, if you see any kind of opening you can at the firm you're at, or any sort of opportunity, just take advantage of it, because you never know where it'll lead you.
Yeah. So, I mean, on that, I mean, I think, you have all these files there, and I think obviously a unique situation, as you pointed out there. I mean, not everyone's going to luck into, that happenstance of everything happening. But what did you do? I mean, when you're taking, I mean, I think a lot of young paralegals, young lawyers for that matter, come into sort of, they have some new files, maybe not like so many, but they start their own practice. They have a few files and they're kind of scared, like that deer in the headlights type of like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I mean, obviously you have responsibilities first and foremost to your clients, right? You can't just figure out, just try your best without kind of putting in, the efforts to become competent. But what do you do there? I mean, I think, because there are a lot, like I think paralegals going in and they have to go out on their own because maybe they're not finding sort of associate kind of opportunities like there are more so for lawyers. I mean, I think we were talking about partnerships, but even on the associate level, I think sometimes it's difficult. But so you have a lot of these clients. What do you do in terms of getting that help and guidance and mentorship from others? I mean, how did you even come about approaching the firm that you're at now with, hey, can I come over there to Toronto and bring this stuff with me? And what happened?
I mean, I think you just have to take the leap and ask, right? If you don't make the opportunity for yourself, it's, no one owes you anything. So make the opportunity for yourself. Say, hey, listen, I'm really interested in doing this. Is there an opportunity where I can come to a mediation with you or a settlement conference with you? Can I draft something for you? Just anything to kind of insert yourself, show some initiative, I think. I mean, it's, again, I don't want to make it so simple sounding, but that's really, when I moved to the firm, when I moved to Toronto, I was asking to go to these mediations or discoveries and said, listen, I'd really like to kind of get more of an understanding of how this works. And you won't always have that. Not every firm is very open to that idea, but, ask anyways. You never know. I mean, at least I can only speak for my firm because it's the only firm I've ever been at, but we're very open in terms of if someone's interested in drafting something or attending some sort of a hearing with us, more the merrier. I think everything is learning opportunity, and there's no reason, unless there is a reason, why someone else can't attend. So, if there's paralegals that are, on their own, I think it's a bit trickier because you can't just kind of ask another paralegal, another firm to attend something with them. That doesn't really work that way, but attending workshops are very helpful. I've actually found LinkedIn to be honestly just a really good way to stay connected. I am not sponsored by LinkedIn, or anything, but I just found it a really good way to see who's out there and to see what people are talking about. And it helped me find the Ontario Paralegal Association that I'm now a part of, and I'm going to be doing some workshops with them and networking that way. And I've had people now that since that article came out of being partner that have reached out that want to work at the firm or talk about what it's like to be a paralegal or what they can do. And I think those are little opportunities you can take to learn a little bit more about the profession and gain some more skills. So like I said, it's difficult to think when you're on your own. That's why I always encourage people, just go to a firm for even a year or two, just be an assistant, do intake, just to kind of get that access to a network and learn a little bit. And then kind of see where you can go from there. But, even go to court sometimes and just sit in on a trial. Like that's what I would do when I was in school. Even if you don't know anybody there, gain that experience. There's nothing wrong. You can go to any open courtroom. So there's really no reason why you can't take that time to go there. Right now, I know it's a bit different, but once they're making them a bit more public, that's also a great way to just understand how the process works. What kind of arguments are people making? What's the judge looking for? Those are such critical opportunities you can take to learn a little bit more.
And I'm glad you said it's so simple there, because I mean, a lot of times students come to me and they say, well, how do I utilize LinkedIn to connect with people like yourself or other paralegals, or even more recent calls? I know actually my phone's kind of blowing up here because I think the law society results are out. So a few more paralegals to add to the rank there. So congratulations to those individuals. But what else? I mean, is it as simple as going into finding someone, connecting with them, and following up and asking questions about, how did you kind of what we've been talking about? How did you kind of make that journey from where you were 10 years ago to today? Do you often find yourself seeing a lot of students or younger paralegals connecting with you and writing to you and asking about things like that?
Certainly now, since that article has come out, for sure. But, I've been trying to reach out as well. Like I said, I joined the Ontario Paralegal Association to kind of network a bit more. And, I was kind of in a bubble for just so long, just kind of keeping my head down and trying to get my own work underway. But, now I think that I do have a lot to offer. So I'm always open. If anybody wants to message me or ask me for tips, I think it's such a great learning tool or experience. So for newer calls or newer paralegals, if it's hard, if you have a file with someone that, you had a good experience with, ask them to go out for coffee afterwards. Even if you were on opposite sides of a file, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Or, just building a friendly rapport with someone on another file is a good way just to get them in your network. You're going to, from most areas of law, you're dealing with the same people. Like in employment law, it's the same people all the time that you're dealing with. So you want to build a good relationship with them. And so I think it kind of, that's a way to kind of network within a specific area of law. But again, with newer licensees, just, even if you don't get a message back, again, it's not at the end of the world. Just message around and see if anyone is willing to take 10 minutes of their time to chat with you. I mean, you have nothing really to lose. They're not going to, the worst case scenario is they don't respond to you, but it is what it is. And again, attending, law study holds a lot of CPD programs. If you see someone you really enjoyed through it, message them, say, I really liked your topic about this. Can maybe we connect and discuss further? I know it's a lot of legwork, but it could be very rewarding down the road. So I think just any little way to network, I think will do a lot of service in the long run, because you don't know if that person's maybe looking for someone like you, and they just happen to be like, hey, you know what, I actually could use a paralegal at the firm. Why don't we have a further conversation? Just little ways like that are so invaluable, I think, to try and, make it for yourself.
Now, you kind of touched on the pandemic a little bit there, and how things have sort of changed, significantly changed in terms of hearings and court and that stuff. What have you found? I mean, in your practice there, and again, it's a little harder, obviously, to come. I mean, I know you can get some Zoom links or something like that and be able to watch and observe, but what have you found in terms of changes that have come about in the pandemic that are affecting kind of the work that you're doing, and how it's different in 2021 than it was in 2019?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I think, almost a 180 in a lot of ways. I mean, first of all, obviously, the small claims court is in disarray, to say it politely. They have a lot of work they need to do, but it's starting to sort of come back. They're starting to schedule things. I think being in this digital remote age has been the biggest difference. I deal with a lot of clients that aren't high income earners, don't have computers, don't have email. So that's always a challenge, trying to make sure that they can attend their court date, that they can even send back a retainer agreement, now that it's all remote and everything. So those are all new challenges that we're trying to figure out and work with. The one of the biggest things I think that has come out of the pandemic that has been such a positive experience is, with now all of our court appearances being either on the phone or over Zoom, I find my clients are so much more relaxed now. Because before the pandemic, you're in a cramped like hot office or room in some small claims court in the middle of nowhere, and you're with, in my case, a former employer, and it's maybe your HR person, and it's awkward, and it's uncomfortable, and you're looking them right in the eye while you're trying to negotiate, we're trying to help negotiate a settlement for them, or talk about maybe very contentious issues. And I found a lot of times that either myself or the other side would use that energy you could feel in the room to your advantage. And having it be over Zoom really cuts that out. And it helps your client, I think, make a much more rationalized decision. They're much more comfortable. They're at home. They're, surrounded by familiarity. So they're not worried about having to drive somewhere, or, they didn't get lunch and now they're hungry. Just these small little things, I think, have made such a difference in terms of just getting a deal done, and just and making it easier. I mean, before, I remember there was just days where I would have an appearance, in Lindsay or in Barrie, and the whole day was wasted in traveling and waiting there and coming back. Now it's, I log in, 45 minutes, you get a deal done, you don't, and you move on with your day. It's, I could do multiple settlement conferences in a day, which is fantastic. So that I love that that's different. But certainly there are still, a lot of other changes with the pandemic, and with the work that I do specifically, like in employment law. There's a lot of different types of issues we see now. A lot of companies are saying, well, you can go on CERB, so, you don't really, what do you want from us? And different kinds of arguments that are being made, certainly, that have come from the pandemic. But just from a practice perspective, again, the small claims court is quite a mess right now, but there are some things that are coming out that are, I think, very, very positive. And I do hope that remote hearings are the way of the future. I think that they should be. They're much more cost effective, and I think everyone's much more comfortable. But we'll see kind of how that continues or plays on, I guess. And it's been challenging, that's for sure. It was a very challenging last 18 months, and it continues to be. But, I think that there's been a lot of good things that have come out of it as well.
Yeah, so let's maybe talk a little bit more about your practice. I think, some of the students here want to know more about what, for paralegals, especially, obviously, what can they be doing in areas like employment law and disability law? And what kind of, I know every day is unique, but what are the sort of different things that you work on both of those aspects, and some of the other areas that you dabble in as well?
Sure. From a disability perspective, that's still, aside from maximum benefits, it's still newer to me, disability. I do mostly short-term disability claims that people have been denied or cut off their claims. I've done CBP appeals before. I've done, I believe, 1 or 2 WSIB appeals, but that's much more complicated scheme, in my opinion. So I've stepped away from that. But, in that area, short-term disability claims, they are on the rise, especially with the pandemic. People are going on stress leave. If they're depressed, issues with COVID, if they've had it, and they have long hauler syndrome symptoms. So that's really an area, I think, that will become more, I don't want to say popular, because that's a horrible way to put it, but more common. And, for a paralegal, with short-term disability claims, for the most part, we are able to handle those because they fall within that threshold, and they're very easy claims to resolve. Most insurance companies don't even want to litigate them or deal with defending them. Very, very easy claim. I mean, it's a bit paper intensive because you have to review the policy, medicals, all of that, but really very straightforward at the end of the day. And if you are a paralegal at a firm that does long-term disability, like we do, it's a great way to keep a file on where they may have a short-term disability claim that turns into an LTD. So now you have almost 2 claims to work on with the same client. You build that relationship with them, and they want to stay with you in the event that their LTD claim gets denied. From an employment perspective, I have told as many people as will listen to me, it is a completely untapped market. I think from a paralegal perspective, there's so much work there, I think, that paralegals could do, and that that lawyers at big firms, they continue to defend, but their clients sometimes want a little bit of a cheaper rate because lawyers are expensive. Lawyers, for the most part, when they're doing a defense on a small claims action, they're charging thousands of dollars because that's just their rate. They have to, or a paralegal would be a fraction of that price. So I think from both the plaintiff and a defendant perspective, there's a huge opportunity there. Employment law, once you kind of get a good grasp of it, it's really not that complicated. There's some nuances about it, but it's really for the most part straightforward. And I'd like to see more paralegals doing it. I think that it's great work. It's very, very rewarding. And with the pandemic, there was a massive job loss that we were really busy with. And I think that a lot of paralegals could have taken some of that work. Don't take it away from us, because obviously that's not what I'm trying to promote. But I think that they're, moving forward, especially, I think the small claims jurisdiction is only going to go up. And I think employment cases are going to become the majority of the cases that are in there. I know that a lot of civil claims are in there. Bob painted my house and I didn't like it. Those claims are still pretty prominent, but I think employment cases are going to be very, very popular now in that court. And so I think I think for any paralegal that is even remotely interested, get involved in that. I think that it's a great opportunity. Same with the Human Rights Tribunal. There's a ton of cases that are linked, discrimination cases linked to employment. The tribunal, it's a little bit behind as well, but once they kind of get their feet under them as well, it's a great place for paralegals to practice as well, or to provide legal services in. It's a great system, I think, in place, with being kind of no cost if you're not successful. So you can really push a file. And so, like I said, I really think that the employment law area is just, it's untapped, like I said, for paralegals. I think it really should be a big focus. But again, even like I said, disability area, it's also very popular. I think it would be great for paralegals. WSIB claims are going to be more popular now with COVID. I think that's going to be a prominent thing as well. So those areas I think are, just ripe for paralegals to come in and just take over that work. I really do think that.
And as well, I think you said you do some accident benefits as well right now. Is that a kind of a way, obviously the tort side there goes into a lot of the different personal injury firms that kind of take that side, but I mean, is that a good opportunity there for paralegals to kind of look at, hey, we can take care of your AB practice, or we can work in your AB practice, and we can even assist on the tort matters, but to kind of look at a lot of the personal injury firms or insurance defense, depending on the side, because I mean, all of those tribunals are as well, the WSIAT and sorry, not the LAT and SABs there. What have you seen kind of in terms of when you look at the tribunals there? Are you seeing a lot more paralegals appearing on the other side on those kinds of matters?
Not particularly, because I do mostly plaintiff side, the injured individual usually does a lawyer defending the insurance company, which does happen. It's actually interesting. I have seen there's a paralegal at a insurance company that does short-term and long-term, and she handles all of these small claims court stuff. And I when I saw that she emailed me on a file, I was excited. I was like, great, this is what I want to see. I want to see paralegals that, like, this is a huge insurance company. I want to see more paralegals in these roles and handling these claims. It doesn't always have to be a lawyer that does it. We're fully capable of handling those claims as long as they're in our jurisdiction, of course. And so with the accident benefit stuff, it's a little bit tricky right now. They've changed the schedule a lot, where from a financial standpoint, it's almost like they've tried to push out legal representation because they know it won't be worth it to the injured claimant. But I think your idea of having somebody handle the accident benefit side of it, and almost, with another lawyer doing the tort, we have done that before in the past too. And I think that does work really well. I think a lot of firms that do practice personal injury and that do the tort claim, they usually have like an AB clerk, which is typically a paralegal in-house that assists with those. But I have seen kind of almost like an outside paralegal firm handle just the ABs alone. It's just that, like I said, from a financial standpoint, it's a little bit different. It's a bit harder to, make it a viable business, just with the way that they changed everything. But certainly, I do think that is still an area that paralegals could, do strive in, and where there a lot of work could be done there, especially, like I said, in conjunction with a lawyer handling the tort. A lot of it is very paper intensive, which most lawyers don't want to deal with. So filling that role in, you can appear at the License Appeal Tribunal. So that's a great way to, keep that file on. So yeah, it's definitely changed a lot since I started doing it. But it's still an area that is available to them, certainly. But kind of like in BC, where ICBC's changed, where now there are kind of, again, like here, making legal representation almost, good luck. No one's going to help you with that. It's kind of what's going on here, but there's still work there for sure.
I mean, I know we've kind of throughout this have been talking about sort of ways in which paralegals can kind of, there's this untapped potential there, right? That there's so much available, especially like you mentioned in employment law. What can, whether it's, sort of you mentioned like kind of getting mentorship, following, well, kind of how do you get yourself to make that step up in terms of, look, we can do employment law, we can do all these different tribunals. What helps you make that leap? I guess I think to use what you said before, to feel more comfortable. I mean, it's kind of, you have to, like you said, you have to walk before you run, sort of. But how do you better equip yourself with being able to go and launch into, well, I know that there's not that many people doing employment law, so I want to get into that. And how can I better equip myself as a young paralegal or even a paralegal student for those opportunities in the future?
Yeah, I think this is where this goes back to my point of doing client intake or assisting at a firm that practices the area you're interested in. Again, I've always been a huge proponent of, again, I guess like you said, you got to walk before you run. Do 2-3 years at a firm, not being a paralegal. Just try and kind of familiarize yourself with that area of law. Like I said, I think client intake specifically is very helpful, but assisting is also great because you can kind of see how, different legal arguments that are made. You're reviewing demand letters, pleadings that are going out, so you can kind of build your own base of knowledge, and attending CPDs where you can. If you see a lawyer, paralegal that practices employment law, pick their brain. Like I said, for at least personally, I'm always open to chatting to anybody about an idea or strategy. There's also the Law Society has the advisor network. If you have questions about how to practice, reach out. It's a great tool. I'm on that as well, and I get lots of small claims court related questions. I mean, it's not easy I think, to make that leap. I think you really have to kind of carve your own path in a lot of ways, at least right now with kind of how the profession is seen. But hopefully in the future, once we're utilized kind of the way we were intended, you won't have to, make such a big leap into it. It'll just kind of be like, okay, here's some training, almost like an associate coming, like a new call. Here's you have your own file load now, good luck, and here's some mentorship. If you're doing your hours, or when you have to do your hours, I think a lot of people just go anywhere just to get the hours. Try and find a firm that does, specialize or is doing what you're interested in, and see if there's any opportunities within that firm to stay on in some capacity and continue to learn. But it won't come overnight. Give yourself a break and understand that it will take time. It took me a very long time to really understand really what I was doing. And like I said at the beginning, my motto has always been fake it till you make it. So even if you're not certain, just pretend you do until, you can look up the answer later on, and be confident in it, even if you're not 100% sure. That's really, I guess the advice that I have is just to go back to is really just go into a firm that you can find and do more of an entry-level job of some sort, to just get that experience. I think that is just so critical.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly important because a lot of people, and part of it's maybe coming into, switching careers and getting into a program and thinking, well, I want to be, making massive amount of money coming right out of school, and they don't realize that there has to be no effort put in, and it takes time, right? It's not built overnight, like as you said. So certainly it was very important there to understand that there's got to be a bridge from where you are to where you want to be.
Absolutely.
Now, another thing that does also come up that when you're putting in a lot of that work, and it is certainly in our profession, and it's a lot different than maybe it was 10, 15 years ago in terms of taking care of your own mental health, right? We've seen Olympic athletes and so forth, making sure to take care of themselves first. But how have you found that in the legal profession, where traditionally there is, for the associates and the younger or newer paralegals and lawyers, that there's a lot of more pressures have been put on them, right, in terms of being able to take care of all this, and you have that desire, you want to show to the senior partners that, hey, I can handle this. But at the same time finding time for yourself, especially, over the last 18 months where, we've had a lot more with the pandemic. What have you found that's worked for you, or what, in terms of over the last 10 years, in terms of finding all that balance of, especially I think being very young, right, to navigate everything and certainly make partner as you've done over the or earlier this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're completely correct. I think that the pressure expectations of legal professionals has been a lot more, I think, than ever was. There's a lot more competition out there. Deadlines are tight. There's, if you don't do this, somebody else will. There's kind of that mentality in a way. It's very, very intense. And so um, in the last year and a half, especially, has been difficult. We've been working from home since the beginning. And so we're still at home. And sometimes it can feel like, well, when do I disconnect or when do I connect? Because everywhere is my office. And, it's important, I think, to really set those boundaries with not only yourself, but your employer, the law firm you're working at, and make sure that, there's an understanding that you do need the time to step away and not be working. And honestly, if your firm isn't okay with that, if they expect you to kind of be available 24/7, may not be the best environment. I think long term, it will not be good for you. I don't think there's personally, I don't think there's any job that is worth, your mental health and going, just, losing it over it. It's not worth it. And so what I try and do is set, okay, if I come in at, start work at 8:39, I try and have a hard stop at 5, disconnect a little bit. If I need to do a little bit more work in the evening, so be it. It's not the end of the world. I have a few hours to myself, but really trying to set those boundaries, because I think otherwise, if you just think, well, I can work all the time, you don't get anything done because you just assume you have unlimited time to do whatever. And then that kind of causes, stress, anxiety. It's the middle of the night and you're thinking, well, I forgot to do that thing, or I need to do that thing. So making sure you're making time for yourself. I think people in the legal profession have a really hard time taking vacation and actually taking vacation. It's important. Do it. Make sure you're disconnecting. At the end of the day, for the most part, unless you're doing kind of criminal law, nothing we do is life-changing. It's not going to, you're not a doctor. You can step away as long as, you have all your work kind of up to date and you kind of can be in a bit of cruise control. Step away. If you are having difficulty, with mental health issues, or, you're just feeling overwhelmed, it's easier said than done, but talk to somebody. Whether it's within your own family or friends or someone that you work with that you confide in. A lot of benefits plans have, therapy or some counselor you can talk to. I've utilized it in the past and it's been very helpful. I'm not, at all ashamed or embarrassed about it. Everybody needs help once in a while. There's a lot going on pretty much all the time, especially with the pandemic. So ask for help when you need it. If you find that you're just overwhelmed with work, I can assure you that for the most part, if you tell your manager, supervisor, whoever it is that, listen, this is kind of too much, I need to maybe take a few things off my plate. If they're the right employer, they'll be open and receptive to that and be like, listen, I appreciate you coming to me about this. I'd rather delegate work than, have everything kind of done poorly because you were just too stressed out to do it. So just, like I said, creating boundaries for yourself with your employer, but making sure obviously that you're, not working 20 hours a week just because you're, trying to set too many boundaries is really important, and just taking time to yourself and stepping away from the computer every so often to kind of recharge. Because I find that in kind of moments where I have worked, 24/7, as it felt like, I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't, I felt I was very agitated. Everything annoyed me. And that's not who I am normally. It was just from stress. And so taking that time and stepping away, it helps you be better professional overall. And you are better at your job when you can not do it sometimes.
Yes, hopefully that answered I think the question came in while you were talking there about someone who has a problem stepping away and letting go of things there. Another thing we've talked about quite a bit, Melanie, is in terms of diversity in the profession, and certainly in rising within the profession, right? Whether it's Indigenous groups, people of color, women, people with disabilities. And what have you found in terms of your experience within the 10 years in the profession, in terms of certainly seeing you rise to partnership, not just for paralegals here, but for women there and other groups. What have you seen in kind of over those 10 years? Have you seen sort of more of a shift that we're seeing more opportunities for the different groups there, and what can be done to kind of further provide those opportunities there for partnership track, let's say, for lawyers and paralegals, for those in the different communities?
It's a really, really good question. I think that there's still obviously issues with not having equal opportunities for everybody. I can only speak from the viewpoint as just a woman. And so, I think that from my point of view, a lot of times I have felt from on files with other lawyers that, because I couldn't, bro out with them, that I wasn't, I didn't know what I was doing, or, that if I took maybe a very assertive position, I was called a kind of a bad word versus just, oh, that guy's pretty tough. I think that women kind of get this, bad rap sometimes, that when they're being assertive, they're being aggressive, and that's not what it is. In terms of creating opportunities, I've started to see a lot of firms. I know that there's this one firm, employment law firm, that they are only run by women, and I think that's just awesome. I think it's a fantastic kind of model of doing that. They're very open in terms of bringing kids to work. If you need time off for daycare, they're very flexible in terms of the needs of women and mothers specifically, which I think is a good way to show other firms that you can be a mother or a woman or anything and still practice law and be good at that as well. I think that the conversation with specifically with Indigenous people has been very much in the forefront lately, and I think that it's critical, it's important, and there have been a lot more certainly educational pieces to help us understand the history of what the Indigenous went through in Canada. And I think hopefully with that will come more opportunity to get that perspective at a law firm and to give those opportunities that perhaps didn't exist before. In terms of the track to partnership, I think it's just going to be a matter of, people understanding that it doesn't matter what gender you are, what ethnicity or whatever, as long as you can do your job and you're good at it, then you should be able to have the same opportunities as anybody else. That's kind of my perspective of it, at least. I know maybe it's a bit, not as comprehensive as probably you thought, but, I think it's still ever changing. And I think that, I'm looking forward to the day where that's not a question anymore, where it's just kind of the norm.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to that day where we can look around and, everyone, all different backgrounds, and you could say I'm a lawyer, I'm a paralegal, I'm in the legal profession, and no one would think any differently, right? And then certainly, it's not an added layer of difficulty for women that are paralegals, because you also have this lens of, oh, you're a paralegal, and then they may associate you with being like the legal assistant or something, and that you're not actually on the file. And can you let the lawyer know, I want to have an offer to settle or something, and it's very belittling. But you always have to kind of fight against that perception, that wrong perception. And again, hopefully there's a day where you don't have to worry about that, and people acknowledge you just like they should be acknowledging paralegals generally as having a seat at the table, and something that you fought really hard for here to have that. And congratulations again on the partnership. And thanks so much for taking the time here and joining us today and sharing all that. I think any paralegal or anyone really in the legal profession should hopefully be able to listen to this and look at the journey that you had and see that there are opportunities like that for paralegals, and hopefully down the road that we're going to see a lot more as partners. Just wondering if maybe you have any final words of wisdom. I know you've shared quite a lot of wisdom here with us today, and I really appreciated of you joining us. For anyone listening, in terms of getting through the profession, maybe looking back to where you were in 2011, I think, or 2010, when you were, I think, out of Sheridan and ready to become licensed, and to where you are today. I mean, it's probably a very incredible journey, and I'm sure Sheridan will probably want to bring you back there and talk to their students. But thanks again for joining us, and looking forward to what more you have in store over the next while as well.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun chatting, and thank you again for doing this type of podcast. I think it's really informative. In terms of words of wisdom, I think I've been pretty clear in terms of what my motto has been of fake it till you make it. But I honestly really believe in that. I think, as I was saying also earlier, try to take any opportunity you can to learn something and to do better at something. And there's no opportunity that's too small. I didn't mention this earlier, but maybe it's somewhat important, but I am here now today, honestly, because of a post I saw on LinkedIn. Like that's where I got this job, was because I saw someone looking for an assistant. I, talked to them about it, and kind of everything evolved from there. So you never know what little small opportunity comes your way. And this was a part-time, very non-guaranteed work type of position. So don't, look at any opportunity. Well, that's not exactly what I want to do, and that's not really the field I want to go in. You never know what could become, what it could turn into. And so try everything. And, I think that the profession for paralegals is in a very good trajectory. I think that law firms are starting to realize what great value we bring in so many ways. And I'm excited for, again, for partners as paralegals to be a common thing and not just kind of this, once in a while it happens. I think it will become much more regular. Absolutely.
Perfect. So thanks again, Melanie, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Wish you all the best and take care, everyone. See you soon.
Take care.